Intake valves, their clearance value needs to be between 2/1000ths of an inch and 5/1000ths of an inch. They give us a little spread there. So we'll try the 5/1000ths gauge right off in the same go, no go fashion. As you can see, the 5/1000th gauge is in, and it's a little snug, but let's check the back one and see where we are. Okay, we have the 5/1000th gauge in the rear one. Let's see if the second one is still exceeding. That's a go, no go on a 6/1000ths blade. Well, let's go to actually the 5/1000ths, which is on the outside of the adjustment. It'll be a little loose at 5/1000, but that is an acceptable clearance according to the BRP manual for the new Mavericks and the 1000cc displacement. This is not an 800. Or go, no go on the 5/1000ths. It's a nice tight fit with the 6/1000ths feeler gauge in the other enclosure. As you can see, I've got a little looseness there with a 5/1000ths gauge on the opposing side. We're at the outside of the limit at about 6.5/1000ths clearance, and that is absolutely where we want to be. Couldn't get any better on the intake. So now we've gone over, we found one extremely loose exhaust valve. Recheck all your jam nuts to make sure you didn't forget to leave anything loose. Now the front bank is done at this time, so we'll reinstall the valve cover so we don't have to worry about any pesky debris getting down the side. And that's always a good feeling of seeing one of the covers go back on. Okay, we had one screw in there already. It's actually a bolt, a shouldered bolt with a shoulder in the middle and grommets on top. So we've definitely got to call these special bolts. So after we get all our bolts ran in, valve covers, and again, you know, just as long as the rubber is good and pliable, you see no signs or have to think there's been no real overheating of this machine. We'll just snug the valve cover bolts up. This one's running in a little easier. Of course, it's always easier if you can get your hand right on it. Okay, we've got a ratcheting wrench in here now. A lot of people may come away from this valve adjustment realizing that they may not want to tackle this, but for the dealers out there that have integrity and do the job right, it takes them a while to do it, as you see, and they can get right at these valves, making it easier, but we've got to rotate the engine first. So let's insert our 14mm Allen, and let's watch the crank here as we move it forward to the next time timing, Mark.
I think you're perfect. Hold on.
So far, smooth sailing. We're going after the intake valves first on the rear bank. And remember, intake is 2 thousandths to 5 thousandths clearance, and it will be go, no go method again. First, we'll look for any loose valves. Start right off with a 5 thousandths feeler gauge. Sometimes it's easier to come in from the other side. Now, a 5 thousandths blade is a no-go. First one we're trying on the intake. Yet a 5 thousandths field blade is going right in the second one. So we're going to adjust this second valve with the screwdriver and the 10mm wrench. The photographer is in a great position to take a picture of this. Now, very small movements are big adjustments sometimes because of the very, very small increments we're working in. Okay, this adjustment, 5 thousandths gauge, is a little tough to pull out, so we'll check it with a thinner one. So I expect the 3 thousandths gauge to slide in there pretty easily. Now, I'm being a little extra fussy on these valves because I'm trying to show people how to do this. There's little swivel feet on the bottom of the rockers where it meets the valves, and it makes it a little tedious getting the feeler gauge in and out sometimes. It can try your patience. So remember, as I first said, bring your patience when you're ready to do this.
Beautiful.
Okay. We have the 3 thousandths gauge in for what we call a perfect fit. You see on a close-up here, this one roller, you see I'm rolling it by hand, actuates this whole rocker. One rocker operates 2 valves. So theoretically, this rocker can tilt either way, back and forth. Hopefully the camera can see the finer points here. It goes across, it's pivoting on one rocker shaft. These adjusters are tied together. This is why we want to put a feeler gauge in both at the same time, so no measurement gets past us and everything is congruent. Okay, our second intake valve, 4 thousandths, goes in a little tight, and the other side was at 3.5. Our intake valves are done. Let's check the jam nuts. Good and snug. But within spec, you should always feel a little movement. On most all engines, the intake valves run a little tighter than the exhaust valves on the clearances, and this engine is no different.